Hey everyone, how's it going? So with the Tesla Cybertruck here, and we will be getting a yoke install to replace the squircle. So first, what you want to do is remove this top panel between the front tray and the actual windshield. There's a plug that is a light blue on the passenger side. You need to unplug this so your steer-by-wire doesn't go crazy when you remove the steering wheel. That can mess up your steering wheel clock pretty badly and you will not be able to drive it. So using two flathead screwdriver, pop out the airbag, and when you pop out the airbag, there's a plug, the yellow plug. Using a flathead screwdriver, you will be able to pull out that connection. Next, remove that blue connection, a burgundy connection that is, and that is on the left hand side. That's for the scroll wheel. Use a 10mm socket, and if you can get somebody to help you hold the steering wheel, highly recommend it. And if you don't, then try to hold it with your knee and use a longer ratchet bar. So using the longer breaker bar, this will allow you to actually loosen the socket without having any issue. So after you loosen and break that 10mm socket, you can unscrew it with your fingers. To remove it, just wiggle it out and it slides right through. Don't mess with that clock on that steering wheel. Just leave it alone and install it as you remove it in the same position. So in order to install the yoke, you do have to transfer all the internal components from the OEM squircle wheel over to the yoke. And the reason for this is that you have a perfect fit and there's no issue with the scroll wheels by using the OEM parts. So transferring over is 1 for 1. You just want to start with unscrewing all the screws, starting with the airbag housing. So those are the black bracket with the silver lining with where the screws are at. So you can't miss that. There's 4 screws in total, 2 on the left and 2 on the right side. Once you have those screws, torque screws removed, remove that airbag lock mechanism. Next, go to the back of the actual squircle wheel itself. On the bottom trim, you want to pop open this plastic cover. There are hidden screws behind here as well. You want to remove those 3. Before you remove all those 3, there's additional screws, and you want to remove these 4 screws, torque screw on the back as well. So a total of 7 screws from the rear. Removing this allows you to pull out the actual plastic cover and also the internal harness connection. So again, take your time. Some of these screws are screwed into other plastic. So when you screw it back on the yoke, make sure you don't over torque it. So once you remove those 4 screws, now you can go ahead and remove the 3 lower screw underneath that cover that you just removed. Again, you can do this in any sequence you like. If you have a actual impact there and extension tool, then highly recommending using that instead of just using your bare hand. It will increase the efficiency and make the process a lot quicker. So the installation takes about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how quickly you get all these screws out. There's quite a lot of screws here. So if you have a impactor, this will be no more than 15 minutes for the installation. Very easy. The installation process after you remove this cover, there's additional screws that you want to also remove behind that cover, and this is also hidden behind. Go ahead and take that impactor or that handheld screw. There's 3 on each side, and that again, it holds down the actual scroll wheel and also the internal component. These are in fact connected to plastic, so just take it easy, and then after that unplug it. So what you're unplugging now is just basically the harness to the heated steering wheel. The yoke does come with heated feature, so it will be able to heat up that yoke full real carbon fiber as well without any damage. So once the internal components is removed from the OEM squircle, go ahead and transfer it over. And you want to remove that lower trim cover first and put on the 2 scroll wheel harness and tray cover, and then just line it up. So you will do this in reverse order. You will screw everything back on just as you remove it earlier. And then now put the lower trim on the bottom, and this lower trim will line up with where the screw holes are at and face it down. You want to work on this yoke on a carbon fiber cloth. Don't just put it bare on the floor. It's going to scratch up the wheel. So you want to put a blanket or just a carbon fiber cloth will do. So go ahead and screw those 3 screws back on each corner for the scroll wheels. Again, using the same screws that you remove. And these are going back onto plastic. So again, just take it easy. Hand tighten this. Don't use an impactor when you're screwing these back on, especially for the ones that are connected to the plastic trim. These screws, don't lose them. If you have a little cup, highly recommend putting all the screws in the cup so you don't misplace them or it rolls around. Do this on a flat surface on the ground is highly recommended. And again, 3 screws on each side using the same screws that you removed earlier from the OEM squircle, and then installing it back onto this yoke itself. So the yoke does have the core, an OEM core. It just doesn't have the electronics and the module. You have to transfer that over. And this works better because then there's no issues with any of the scroll wheel, switches, buttons, airbag. You're all using the same OEM that came with your vehicle. So now tuck in all the wires and plug in the wires itself for the heat, as well as the scroll wheel and then the heated steering wheel. Then go ahead and place the actual yoke into that cover. Now this is in reverse order now. So you want to tuck away, make sure there's no wires pinching against any of the trim, and take your time with this. This is very important. You want to make sure everything lines up and all the wires are tucked away where it was originally on the OEM wheel itself. And press it in, make sure there's no gaps on any corner. Then once you have everything in place, go ahead and grab those same screws that you removed earlier and screw these back on. And this will screw back that back cover. And again, hand screwing these on because you do not want to use an impactor to screw on screws that goes onto plastic. You're going to definitely strip the plastic and it won't hold it down. Unscrewing it, you have very little risk of it damaging any of the trim, so you can use the impactor for that. For the actual casing itself that goes on from plastic to metal, so the actual core itself, you can actually use an impactor for this one. It won't strip them. But the bottom trim, it is plastic to plastic. So you want to hand tighten these as well. So just make sure you're aware of what screws you're putting back on. If it's plastic to plastic or metal to plastic, you want to hand screw them on and hand tighten them. And don't over tighten them either. You can't strip it even if you manually screw these back on. And then for the rear, after you place this cover back on, there's still 4 screws on the back. So a total of 7 screws for the back before you remove the actual cover itself. So these ones, you can actually use an impactor, but you can also still hand screw them on. And again, make sure they're on there tight enough, but not over tightened to ensure nothing comes off. This is very critical for the back screws to make sure they're fully on there, because if they're not, they will be rubbing onto the plastic trim behind your actual steering wheel itself. So again, using an impactor, again, you want to be careful and screw them on. Once there's some tension, then you want to stop. For this situation, is plastic to metal. So plastic to metal, there's a less chance you're going to strip it versus from plastic to plastic or metal to plastic. So get a set of torque screw and a screwdriver. And then if you don't have an impactor, you still can install this. It might take a little longer, maybe 20 to 30 minutes if you manually do everything. And then now back to the front, you will be screwing these back on as well. And this is just the casing. And then you will be putting back the airbag lock mechanism. So some of these screws are very small. So if you drop them, make sure you have a blanket underneath or a carbon fiber cloth. And highly recommend doing this on the floor in case if you do drop any screw, you don't lose them. There's no extra screws in this kit. It all comes from your OEM wheel. So you only have one for each of those slots. And it's very critical not to lose any of them. Now putting back on the airbag lock mechanism, there's 4 of those shiny screws. Line them up and they should go exactly on as if you were to take them off. Again, in reverse order. Very easy to install. Anyone can do this. And again, using that torque bit screw. This is from plastic to metal. Technically, you can use an impactor for this if you have one. If not, manually screwing them on. Again, it won't be too difficult. It just takes a few more minutes for each one to go on. Just make sure everything is lined up and putting on the last screw here. So after you're done with the swap over, putting the wheel back on to the actual Cybertruck itself. Again, you don't want to touch anything inside the vehicle, and you want to make sure that nobody's tinkering with the display while you're installing this. And this is the final product. It looks absolutely amazing. Again, aesthetically looks appealing, gives you more airflow without the top squircle, and it feels more of what the Cybertruck Yoke came with because you have steer-by-wire and it's easier to drive. Again, don't turn that clock, just line it up and put the wheel, the new yoke wheel back on and slide it on. After you get it on, put back that 10mm socket. And then again, if you have somebody to help you to hold the actual wheel itself, and you will tighten it down with the ratchet. Again, it's about 58 pounds. And then after that, plug in that brown wire and then the yellow wire for the airbag and place the airbag in, press it in into the horn hogs, and it doesn't pop back out. And you're done. Installation finish. And then you plug back that blue wire in the front, and this is how it looks like. Absolutely amazing. If you're interested in this product, link in the description of this video. It makes the cabin looks more premium, and it also feels better when you're driving it because the steer-by-wire, you don't have to turn the wheel over 2.5 times. It's literally just almost over half, and you're doing a full U-turn already. So in the sunlight, in any light, real carbon fiber looks amazing compared to fake carbon fiber. So don't go for the fake one. The real one is something special. And in this Cybertruck, it makes it even more special. You can see the glitter shine there as the sun reflects off of it. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe. Catch y'all next time.